Hey guys, Sam Stein here, managing editor at the Bulwark. I'm joined by Bill Kristol, professor emeritus.
And look at this, cordial
Look at us,
conversation. A
baby.
cordial conversation.
Yeah,
He's already
exactly.
making fun of me.
No,
out of
no.
touch academic.
No.
I'm a little concerned about Epstein. People like Sam, the political pros, the pros like Sam, are just, oh come on, that's just in a day's work.
It's a pleasure being in studio with Bill. We're going to be talking about Jeffrey Epstein, as everyone is talking about. But before we do, subscribe to the feed. We appreciate that. All right, so I don't think we're in total disagreement, but there might be some interesting divergence of opinions about Epstein, the salient of the scandal, and whether Trump can maneuver around it. Our colleague Will Sommer had about 5 factions of the Epstein universe and how they're approaching Trump. I'm not going to go through all 5, but suffice it to say, he thinks some people are going to agree with Trump and just move on, right? And I feel like that has you a little bit sort of, not panicked, but a little bit frustrated. Is that fair?
No.
No.
Totally
okay.
unfair. Unbelievable.
Unfair.
I'm leaving. I'm walking.
What do you make? Do you think?
But
I guess the question is, can Trump get
think,
through this?
I think I will say last week I will say that one of the few things I've gotten right in recent months and years is that I thought Epstein could be bigger than people thought. When everyone on Tuesday was just kind of laughing about Trump at the cabinet meeting, I thought this could be more of a problem, and it did become a problem with his base certainly, which he then tried to deal with on Saturday with that insane long Truth Social post, and so that's been the saga. And then meanwhile, there's the Charlie Kirk thing going on, the Turning Point. And
let's just stop and say the Charlie Kirk thing is that Charlie Kirk had a call apparently with Donald Trump, who told him, "Move on."
Charlie Kirk, he runs that group, what's it called? Turning Point,
yeah,
which was having its big conference that weekend, and everyone was showing up, and people like Roger Stone, who were true Trump loyalists, were trying to tell the crowd, cool it, don't worry about it, and he was getting booed.
Yeah.
Charlie started off, Charlie Kirk, I knew him a little bit years ago before he was a total Trumpy lunatic, started off by saying, I'm very worried about this Epstein. We were all so concerned. We can't just shut it up. Trump called him Saturday morning, apparently. By Monday, Charlie Kirk saying, we just got to move on. So I'm assuming Trump. So on the MAGA fracturing and causing massive problems for Trump, or Republican members of Congress really being upset, I hope it does cause trouble for Trump. I think it is causing some trouble, and it has and it's not going away. Right. But I suspect, at the end of the day, he can bludgeon those people mostly into subservience. What do you think so?
Slightly different interpretation, but probably the same end result. And this is the basis for Morning Shots this morning, which is the issue with a conspiracy theory is you can't tell people, oh, it's not true, because they'll never believe that it's not true. I mean, there's no rationalizing with a conspiracy theorist. What you can do is you can create a different conspiracy theory, sometimes on top of the existing conspiracy theory, or you can distract them into something else. You just try to turn the page, more or less. And I think that Trump can do. He can do it through a variety of different things, but mostly just by being Donald Trump. Like, everything is just like, there's always a new story that people talk about. We always move on to the next story. You can always say, oh my God, do you remember a week ago we were talking about this? Because you've forgotten that you were talking about that. And I think that's probably what ends up happening here. Morning Shots this morning was about a White House that did not know this and failed to understand the lessons of this, and that was the Obama White House. So the basis of the story is that Trump in 2011 gins up, reignites the flames around birtherism. And I remember being in the White House at the time as a reporter covering it, and they were trying to talk about the budget and this fight with the Republicans on taxes and domestic spending cuts, and they couldn't get any traction because everyone was talking about birtherism. So they thought, well, rationally, what do? We just finally will put out this birth certificate, and everyone realized, oh, this is so stupid. And it didn't do anything because Trump just said, oh, thanks for doing that, but is it real? And then everyone was like, well, where's the long-form birth certificate? And truly, the only thing that could get them onto a different topic was to essentially have a different topic to talk about. I think that's probably what's going to happen here.
Yeah, and as you and I discussed this early this morning, as we were editing Morning Shots, which is worth reading today. Incidentally, Andrew Egger has a very good piece on this aspect of it, I'd say, and I have a piece on a sort of slightly different aspect. Sure. But as we were saying this morning, Obama did, on the other hand, get reelected in 2012, and so these things can be a pain in the neck for you as a White House, but not decisive.
Yeah.
And so what I said, sort of supplementing Andrew's piece, I think, is that one interesting question that is, does it go beyond an internal MAGA world problem,
Right.
Trump supporter problem, and the Democrats are now trying to make it more of a real problem,
Right.
sort of a broader problem for Republicans. And, that could blow it up a little more. One thing there, though, Democrats have to decide, you can't just, you can play games for a while, of course, and say, you said this, and you said it was
Right.
he was murdered. Now you're saying that we can't even look into it. And okay, fine, you get that's the kind of thing that lasts for a week or two or three
Sure.
and then goes away. If Democrats are willing to say the whole Epstein thing is kind of a disgrace, though, honestly, which I think it is, and he got slapped on the wrist, and it shows you the establishment did have real problems before Trump came along and MAGA came along and totally demagogued it and invented made it much more crazily conspiratorial than it needed to have been or than it is. And we're willing to be the party that's anti-Epstein, sort of anti-establishment, but also anti-Trump MAGA craziness.
Right.
That, I think, would be an interesting future for the Democrats. And final point is the lefties, of course, on the Democratic side, they're happy to do this because they hate the establishment. And so, it fits into their narrative, right?
Right.
The question is, if you're a moderate Democrat who's serious about governing, but also has the sense, A, that the Epstein thing really is a disgrace, and B, that you sort of need to be more of a reformer. You can't just be like defending the old establishment.
Yeah.
I think there's a real avenue there to do what we've all discussed this, you, me, Tim. Can you be a moderate Democrat on sort of policy issues while being a fighter and a reformer and a change type,
Right.
temperamentally almost? And I think that's a bit of an opening for the Josh Shapiros and Buttigieg's of the world.
I see that. I think it's interesting because there's like the distinction between trolling, which is what some of them are doing now, a privileged resolution to unleash all, and votes to, make it all public. And then a substantive argument around whether this is some part of something bigger, the elites who run the country and actually cover up for each other. And, if some in our tent get hurt by, the disclosure, so be it, right? I think the problem, if I had to guess, for Democrats is probably that they don't want to be associated with conspiratorial thinking, right? And that's partially because they don't want to be accused of being like Trump. I mean, Trump basically is birthed in this type of politics.
Totally.
And they've made themselves the oppositional party to not just Trump, but that type of politics. And so if you feel like you're in the kind of mud, you don't like that. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying I think that's probably
I think that's a very good point and well said. And I do think I think it's a correct hesitation. You don't want to be cheek by jowl with MAGA conspiracists.
It's like how they always hesitate to Trump has all these stupid nicknames, right? And then when the Democrats are like, let's try our hand at the nicknames, and it looks so silly and stupid.
But because the Trump White House isn't going along this time, I do think they can be anti-Trump, anti-Epstein, anti-conspiracy, but anti an establishment that did give him a disgraceful slap on the wrist in 2008. And it took Julie Brown a year of courageous reporting to get him indicted again, charged again, and indicted again in 2019 and so forth. So I think they can maybe on this one, it's a little tricky, sort of have the best of all worlds.
You've made I think a pretty compelling case that Trump obviously is signing off on all this stuff, that he's directing Bondi not to release these files, and that, he's probably talking to Cash and Bongino and saying, you can go out there and tell him. What is your theory of the case now about actual Trump culpability or an involvement or vulnerability here?
I mean, I don't know. It's gotten so distorted by all this talk about the client lists and all these things which may not exist. I mean, Trump is in the files.
We know that.
Right.
Yes.
We've seen the logs of the airplanes. I mean, the files are probably tens of thousands of pages of investigative records. And, of course, there is some truth to the argument. You can't just release these things. I mean, no one ever has an anti-criminal case. There's interviews with X who says something about Y is totally unconfirmed. X maybe, and that's that.
And now Y suddenly is a child pedophilia.
Right. And it's really irresponsible. I think maybe illegal in some cases to just release that stuff. Having said that, it's also the case that we had a massive conspiracy that was horrible and took advantage of, and not took advantage is too weak almost, just treated in a criminal way, underage girls, maybe 1,000 of them, and 2 people at the end of the day were indicted.
Right.
And one, Epstein, killed himself, and the other, had a slap on the wrist and then killed himself the second time, and then the other was Maxwell, who got a sentence. But, these conspiracies do take more than 2 people. And I'm not saying every person, the person who flew the plane to the island, okay, maybe he didn't quite know what was going on. He shouldn't be, indicted necessarily 20 years later. But there are a lot of middlemen, so to speak. There are a lot of people who took advantage of these girls, to say the least, who maybe knew what was going on. Maybe they didn't. I mean, I think when we do deserve some at least clarity on what we know, what we think, maybe not individual names, maybe not more indictments even. I was thinking of other examples of this. I'm sure you can think of a whole bunch too. When Comey decided not to prosecute Hillary for the emails, to take an obvious kind of political, very different situation. But, he decided not to prosecute. May have been the right decision, maybe no. It's kind of messed up the way they handled it. But he also had a press conference and they issued a real statement, which gave you a sense. Here's what she did. Here's
and
what
nothing
she
ever came of that.
Here's what. Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, maybe that's which way does that lesson cut? Maybe no, but I mean, at least it was an attempt. I think, sort of in good faith, to say the public deserves some sense of what she did that may have been wrong, inadvisable, but not criminal, and so forth. And you can think of many, many other instances where we've gotten some notion of what happened. And this does seem like an unusual case in that we know so little about what was a massive criminal conspiracy run by an extremely prominent person, which involved a lot of other prominent people. We don't need the details of Prince Andrew did this or whatever.
I wouldn't mind the details.
Well, some of it might be legit, incidentally, but anyway, I do feel like so this is, but it's a problem. The MAGA people turned it into a crazy conspiracy, and then everyone, and I felt this personally, I think you may have thought that, it was like, well, I don't know, it's some crazy conspiracy, I'm not paying attention to it. And it really took me a while to focus on what was happening in this last 2, 3, 4 weeks. And it took me actually a conversation with Julie Brown, the Miami Herald reporter who did such courageous work on this, to really think, you know what, there's kind of a scandal here.
Bulwark Takes is sponsored by Sol. Are you sick of drinking your calories, or are you sick of just waking up hungover? Having some drinks can be fun, but I'm glad that I found an alternative that lets me feel great in the moment and in the next morning. Out of Office Gummies from Sol. Sol is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and that it should be easy. Sol specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products designed to boost your mood and help you unwind. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz to boost your mood and to enhance creativity and relaxation. I've been taking a low-dosage one of these gummies before bed, and you know what? My parenting skills have gone through the roof. My kids are doing great. I'm doing great. I'm sleeping great. It's great. The out-of-office gummies come in 4 different strengths, so you can find the perfect dose for your vibe. You can choose from the gentle microdose to the perfect buzz. You can get a noticeable high, or you can get the fully lit experience, which we call here the Tim Miller Special. With wellness at the forefront, you can feel good about what you're putting in your body. All of Sol's products are made from organically farmed USA grown hemp and are vegan, gluten-free, and low in sugar. And if you like their out-of-office gummies, you've got to try their out-of-office beverage, a refreshing, alcohol-free alternative that is perfect for summer sipping. Seriously, in that DC heat, I have to have it. So bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Sol today. Right now, Sol is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. That's right, 30% off. Not bad. Go to getsol.com and use the code BulwarkTakes. That's getsol.com, promo code BulwarkTakes for 30% off.
And there is some sort of knee-jerk, almost thermostatic politics to this, where it's like, oh, if these people are going off on this, then surely it's nuttiness, right? And then maybe, you look into it a little bit more and your opinions change. I will say, I think just to circle back to the original point, which is, can Trump kind of put this genie back in the bottle or just move on from it? Maybe so, but I do think there's a whole host of people who kind of aren't politically involved per se, but are attracted to these types of outrageous stories, and that has in turn brought them into the political system, who will look at this and be like, wait a second, like, I thought you said you were going to expose all this stuff, and you drew me in because I thought there was an actual cabal. And yes, so some of them might say, well, I mean, there's one in the Will Sommer piece, some of the stuff that people are resorting to is insane, like Scott Adams saying, well, no, the pedophile cabal is actually more powerful than Trump. And some of this stuff is really out there. But there might be some semi-rational people who just say this is a deception and this is, I can't forgive you for this.
No, I think that's right. And I also think, just to double back to that original point, I think you're right to think that this is a trickier thing for Trump to handle than a typical attack by Democrats on Trump,
Right, because that's easy.
That's like he's kind of used to that. Yeah. And once you've won 2 general elections, people discount an awful lot of those attacks at this point. Whereas I do think this one, because some of it comes from his base, it has to do with what is undoubtedly a truly grotesque situation.
He's also
that he
acting
was
just weird about it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very
and there are these photos of him
uncharacteristically,
and Jeffrey Epstein
But just the way he's
laughing.
like, oh, why are you focused on this scandal?
Right.
We have really important policy stuff.
Right.
Like, that's not Trump. Like, when
No,
did you care about policy stuff over the salacious scandals?
And don't you think the Saturday tweet or Truth Social where he starts screaming about how these could have been fake documents
I read
invented
that. I read
by
that
Obama
5 times. I couldn't
and Clinton.
figure it out.
And that shows a he's doing what he instinctively knows he should do, which is blame the other side.
Sure.
I think even when the tape came up of his own voice, the Billy Bush tape, the
Yeah,
Hollywood
yeah.
tape, the first thing they said is, I think this is right, that it could be fake.
No. At first, no. What happened was he first apologized for it because his people made him do it.
I see.
And after that, he said, "Well, I don't know. Did they doctor that
Yeah,
thing?"
so I mean that's always been his instinct.
Yeah.
It's of course from his point of view like a reasonable thing to toss out there. Because why not? Maybe some people will believe it. But I agree. But there's a kind of desperation on that Saturday thing. So I'm very open to the view that I do believe that it's a more difficult thing for him to handle than most things he's had to deal with, and I'm open to the view that it really could be very damaging to his political well-being. I also am open to the view that he's pretty good at controlling.
Well, here too,
MAGA.
here too, I think the birtherism storyline is instructive because back then, when Obama did produce the birth certificate, and Trump said, "Well, I'm grateful that he did it. I take credit for him doing this, but is it real?" In fact, he then upped the ante, and he said, "Well, can we see his college transcripts and his passport records, and I will give $5 million to a charity of his choice if he does produce it." So it's always about upping the ante. So that's why, and that explains, I think, the Truth Social post, which is actually no, Obama and Hillary wrote these files, and so he'll figure some way to up the ante in the conspiracy. All right, Bill, thank you so much for
Thank you,
doing this.
Sam.
I
It's a
appreciate
pleasure.
this. It's a pleasure being in studio with you. Thank you guys for watching. It's a pleasure for your viewership as well. Subscribe to our feed so you can get more content like this, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon.